So this case is about winning a bid, but it has to be a consultancy payment to a third party. And in order, if you do that, you will do something that might be on the borderline for corruption. So, but then you will maintain jobs for people. So how should you act in a situation like from your point of view? So what would you do? Just have to read our alternatives and then we can discuss them afterwards.
I think for me, I'll go with yeah, because I think yes, you make, it's about the brand you're making for your company. And the simple example is like if you try to think about let me take an example of an Apple. According, if guys in previous ways they could only opt for this kind of business, which is kind of which has this kind of smile of corruption. I think people, they could now not buying Apple product, but they depended on the quality of the service. So the quality has branded the Apple. So for me also, if corruption, I think it's something which can also destroy. Okay, I was talking.
Yeah. But if you need to do that to get the contract, otherwise your company turns into like lose money and can't continue. Maybe it goes, you need the contract in order to keep your employees. What do you do then?
For me, I will still say because I think like 3 years ago, I came to happen that I attended a local training which was based on corruption issues, on how to combat with corruption. And according to what I saw happening in the society, for me, even though corruption is highly connected with business and making money, fast money, but for me, I still choose to opt for not doing or practicing corruption issues, even if it's based on getting the fast money. I believe there is many right ways to get the money other than to use the corruption means. So for me, as for Gitambwe forums, Gitambwe, what it does is like creating the awareness among the youth. So if I practice corruption, that means I might be also in a situation of teaching my fellow young people the corruption acts issues, which as a result, I might end up not creating the positive generation with positive mind, but the corrupted generation. So for me, for the brand of my company, I would still not opt for corruption issues.
Yeah. But having a third party in the deal, a consultancy payment, that is not necessarily corruption, is it?
Yeah, it's not corruption. It depends.
Yeah, it depends.
Yeah, the third parts, if the third parts, they are there to connect you with the business persons. For example, some companies, they use consultants, right, to get the jobs. The corrupt consultants are registered by the law. They are legally known, so they are also doing business, right? So if you have to pay them to get the job, it's okay because it's clear, it's kind of clear business. But if you have to corrupt to get the job, then that's not good for the company. That's what I could say.
So the corruption is when you're not transparent about it. If you kind of get an invoice, then it's not corruption. But if you pay in cash without the receipt, that's corruption. Is that so?
It's kind of Let's give a chance for other members to contribute first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think, Charles?
Actually, depend. The issue of corruption is more or less cost-cutting. You know, to my thinking, I think it goes both ways, and the environment do differ. What you experience here in Tanzania might be a bit different from what is happening elsewhere in the world. Now, the thing is, our policy as a college, we strive on excellency. We have some other issues like as to who do you know and who do you push your activity. And basically, we focus on pushing issues through an intensive follow-up, regular communication, regular checkouts, and trying to untangle as to where the obstacle is. But the problem now is in our country, the corruption is based on two ways. Number one, you are being forced to offer corruption when you want to avoid being punished for a mistake. Number two, and sometimes that mistake might be created. And number two, you are forced to enter into corruption when you are forced to get a reward. It might be a tender, it might be a position, it might be any sort of a thing. Now, you know, why in our country the corruption never ends? It's because for example, I'm planning to enter a new course in the college. I'm filing my registration issues. When I'm going to make a follow-up, the guy will tell me like, okay, anyways, we'll plan to come there next week, but we'll have fuel and so forth. So it's like I'm trying to intervene. It's a big government institution. I've paid my money. Why do you tell me like fuel issue would hinder your inspection to my college? But again, that's some sort of a language. The core issue there is how do you extend your hand to give someone something to fast track your issues?
Extend your hand. I like that way of saying it. In Norway, in 29.
And the saddest thing in our country, like in Tanzania, the corruption is little as 100, 200,000. You see, so it's a bit of challenging. But our focus, we are focusing on the integrity, on the standard. It's like you do the standard thing first, and then you push it, not financial follow up and some sort of things. The consultancy is more of the hidden part. Someone tell like I need to peruse.
Oh, I got lost you.
Your document and to make some consultation, but on the same you'll need things easy. It's a bit complicated, but what you're mainly focusing is the excellence. You do what you deserve, you do what you're supposed to do in the quality way, and then let the push come later in time. That is my opinion there.
Yeah. In Norway, 30 years ago, it was when we paid bribery in other countries, we could take that, use as a cost in our accounting. So we kind of got our tax. We didn't have to, like, it was like a regular expense. It was allowed to deduct corruption amounts in our accounting system. And then in 1995, I think it was illegal to deduct in the accounting system, but you could still pay bribery. And then in 2002 or something, it was illegal to pay bribery at all. Like you couldn't pay bribery at all. And now you go to jail between 3 and 5 years if you're caught involved in bribery or corruption. So it has changed so much over the years in Norway. It's just amazing to think about how it used to be and how it is now. So have you also experienced lots of changes in Tanzania in this field?
Yes, indeed. We have experienced in some cases, and basically when there is a regime change. So I'll talk when there is a regime change, when there is a new president, starting from the fifth phase of a government. We saw a lot of issues, but again, some things are biased. Like this. A lot of corruption cases would be of business people who are more or less avoiding tax.
Yeah,
when
that's a
charged by
typical thing.
the yes. So in between they'll say you have been corrupt, we have been offer corruption to the member of the revenue authority, etc., etc. But it have never been too tense to the area of making accountable the government official, because corruption is a two-way. There is an act of requesting for a bribe. There is an act of giving the bribe, but it have never been never been in the essence of making accountable the government officials. It have been in the essence of making accountable the business persons. So the previous government, corruption was not, it was broadcasted like there is no corruption, but we have now heard a lot that was happening previously, simply because the media was not airing it out as what was proceeding during that time. So to my opinion, we have made some steps. And in our corruption, in our country in Tanzania, corruption is simply mean making the government officials accountable, making them implementing their duties. That would lessen corruption, because in our areas,
So that's the main problem is like in the public officials more than in private business.
Indeed. Most in the issue of corruption in Tanzania would start from you in the private wanting something in the government, and then you need to pay in order to get that. The regulatory authorities, the revenue authorities, the municipal, and everything. But again, corruption mean and in the part of the private to private, it's there actually. When I want to win a tender to one of the biggest private firm, I'll need to see the procurement guys and so forth. That is part of private, but mostly it's in the government area. Because the thing in the private, most of the private firms they are too integral. The integrity is too high to the extent that most of them will make a proper due diligence and a proper selection. There will be a lot of minimal bias. But in our cases, we experience corruption from the private when you want to get something in the government area, starting from services, the hospitals, the police part, the judiciary systems, the business areas, tendering systems, the university. And in the university, there is one of what we call the sexual corruption. It's spiking. The records that we're experiencing the previous years is too hectic. So we have experienced that. What I can say, there is reduction in corruption, the previous government, because of the measures being taken, but we have not gone to the extent of eliminating it at all. That is my opinion.
Yeah, and I think most countries are struggling with the same thing, and it's like sometimes it's everybody try to save tax, not to pay so much tax, but when we now get the digital registration of everything we pay and or our income, it's becoming more and more digital. It's much harder to hide anything. So yeah. I have one more. Whoops, time is flying here. I was supposed to. I'll have one more case here, and then we can. Let me see here. This is the last one. Okay, can you read that? So this case is about officials like Charles Carles are talking about. What would you do? What would you do here? I would probably pay the $30 to get it over with of my own money. What do you think you would do? All right. Fresh fish, and you have to get the fresh fish. It will be rotten fish if they wait for 2 days to get it out. So in order to get the fresh fish out, you have to pay $30. Do you think people would have done that?
No, actually, to be frank, the practice will be paying $30 to avoid the losses. That'll be the practice to most of us, you see.
Yeah.
But again, to my side, I would like to see if there is an alternative. When you always weigh, is can you do the same activity? Can you push the same activity being done without paying that amount of cash? But again, as the business person who are struggling to make to make the business progress and avoid the losses, sometimes you make an equivalence as to how much are you supposed to pay in order to push your things, even though it's more or less unethical. So it's not ethical, but that the environment that I was saying previously, some of the corrupt issues are being created by the government office or officers or the person who's supposed to make the arrangement. They create that environment for you to pay the amount. You see.
Yeah, no, I definitely see that, and I also see that in at least in Norway, media is so much more involved. So if there is you come into this kind of situation, you will tell media, and that kind of makes people afraid of being involved in this in things like this. And media, like most of the issues in which you read about now, WorldCom and all this, where many of those Enron and stuff were kind of picked up by, partly at least by media. So media has a lot of is doing a very unique work in these sessions. So how do you think in Africa in general, how do you think corruption can be or will be reduced there? What is the main kind of way of reducing corruption?
Now, actually, Professor, as I've said earlier, to my understanding, the corruption comes in basically two main ways. And number one, you need to bribe someone in order to get a reward.
Yeah.
That is case number one. Number two, you need to bribe someone in order to avoid a punishment. Those two cases, basically they would make you offer corruption. Now, to my understanding, we have the bodies. In Tanzania, we have the PCCB, Preventive for Corruption, etc. The particular body have done a lot in making sure that there is no corruption in our country. But what I'm thinking, number one, we should make sure the people who are supposed to offer the services are well educated on what corruption is, on what are their duties, and what are they supposed to do as long as are being paid their salaries by the government. That is number one. You educate the police people, healthcare workers, etc., etc. Number two, we need to make sure there is efficiency and there is always check and balance. There is efficiency and there is a feedback mechanism. You educate, you raise awareness. There is efficiency in the government systems on how to perform their duties. I'm giving you an example. My calendar doesn't tell with the government calendar. I'm supposed to register students maybe on this year. I'm supposed to register my college maybe this year. I filed my applications 2 months back. To my thinking, I expect the application can be done in 2 or 3 weeks, and then I'm getting my certificates done. But whenever there is inefficiency in the government systems, then it creates a room for a business person trying to push to get a reward, and there the issue of corruption now here comes. So when there is efficiency in the government system, there is no delay. Whether program what call the big result now, the BRN. The BRN was implemented to make sure it fast track the issues in all areas. For example, in the judicial systems, they would mobilize, they'll do the camping, they'll mobilize the magistrate, the judges, they'll come to the court and handle all the cases that have been there for a year or 2 years, in order to minimize the delays, to minimize the room for having corruption. So number one, to improve the government efficiencies. Number two is transparency. And you can digitalize, you need to make everything transparency, the reporting systems. When I know that I'm eligible to get a certain issue, a certain favor, a certain service, and when I don't get that, where do I report? Through the digital platforms. And how do I get protected? And again, how do I get the particular reward? Do you have that systems to make sure that I get a particular reward without offering any bribe? And number three, there is what you call the being right. The judicial system should be always righteous. They should be fair. They should be fair and give you what you deserve. Because when you're trying to be, when you have to be punished, you have to be punished, etc. When you have to be rewarded, you have to be rewarded. So we don't need to have a shortcuts. So when we improve our system of granting the fairness and the right to people, that is where now corruption will be more or less getting low. But again, we have to have transparent systems in the tendering processes. We have to educate. We have to have rewards and transparency. 10 people have applied, give a proper feedback. Number one is A because he had A, B, C, D, E. Number two is B because he had less A, B, C, D compared to A. So people would know and would push into being too accurate and being effective in the tendering processes. It's not as easy as how I'm trying to address it, but again, another issue that I see in a bigger picture is like this. You know, when the top office, the top government officer participate in corruption, there is no secrecy. Then if he is in charge of making sure there is no corruption in the lower areas, he not do so because even in his area, he had participated in the corrupt acts. So by the time you want to point finger to someone, it's like you have participated in corruption. People say, okay, in your case, you have also participated in corruption. We don't have people who are as clean as much as, let's say, I'm the head of this institution. I'm clean. I've never participated in the corruption. When you try to participate in corruption, you are becoming weak. I used to give an examples to my colleagues whom we called back and made an internship at the regional referral hospital. And I'll tell them like, listen, when you're a medical doctor, you're treating patients. The relatives would approach you in a weaker way, trying to make you corrupt, give you something. But again, when they try to give you something, whether it's money, is a gift, they would assume what they have given you is what is now treated.
Oops, it lost out. Okay. Well, I think what Charles shared with us now was so interesting.
I also have some contribution to what Chaz
Yeah.
said, and at least I think you can see me now.
Yes, I can see you, Pius.
Okay, I've taken my device. Thank you so much. For me, it's completely, I don't believe that we can end corruption in the world, not even in my country, yes, in the world, because every country has corruption. That's completely the lie, unless we have to format the whole world.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, what I believe is like, what we are doing is just to reduce the number of corruption acts to make sure people they are getting services. Because, for example, if you try to go in African countries, corruption is highly committed between the government. The source of corruption mostly flows from the government, because actually the money, corruption involves getting something which is either overusing the power or getting something which is in a way which is not proper. So as long as we still have business, we still have company, we still have competition in business or in tenders especially, I don't think we can clearly end the corruption. But what we have to do, for example, as you see in African ways, if we don't get the leaders who are committed to fight corruption, we are not going to end these corruption issues. So even if you see, for example, in my country, how the system is, the guy who was contributed said we have the anti-corruption bureau, which is called PCCB in Tanzania. The main leader of the PCCB is still appointed by the president. So to reduce, obviously, to give the power for PCCB to fight with corruption, we have to make it a private entity. Sorry, which means we should have a way in which PCCB is not associated with political leaders or political means. It has no political interest, because if the main leader of the PCCB, which is the fighter entity of corruption, is still connected to the political leaders, and the political leaders are the main source of corruption in any country, it's not going to solve anything, because there is no way you can go to fight with the one who gives you a title.
No.
So the first thing we should make these entities as a private entity, where either by means of changing the constitution or anywhere where we can change the laws to make this to stand as their own. Either we can be, where the leader can be appointed by the member of the parliament, or otherwise way, or they can be voted by the whole citizens. The second thing, which I think can also help to reduce the issue of corruption, is what mostly they do. It's just educating the society, it's educating the generation, it's educating people. But this time I think we have to go extra mile. Like we have to start educating corruption and corruption education, starting from primary education, obviously, because nowadays, according to what I know, the PCCB, which is combating for corruption in Tanzania, it has the clubs in secondary school. But these clubs, they are not given power. It's just there because of the political benefits. You know, it's like I think it's like to make the previously it was like to make the I think, what can I say? I'm trying to find the right way to explain this, but it's just like to make those people, I mean, the other society see that they're educating them, but it's kind of leisure clubs other than educating them on combating corruption.
It just looks good, and it looks good, but it's not really some substance in it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think instead of starting from primary, we should, I mean, secondary, we should start going at a very small education level. I mean, from maybe primary or nursery. And this education on anti-corruption issues should be made as a main subject instead of being termed in terms of clubs, or where students, they have to do them by passion. or by option, it should be made mandatory to be introduced in primary schools up to the university level.
Yeah.
If we really want to see the impact. Otherwise, we cannot see anything. We cannot see the impact. But also, when I said we need the leaders who are committed to fight with corruption, I am taking an example of President Magufuli. Before President Magufuli, and obviously now, there were, for example, if we could go to the community services, right? Especially, let's say, in hospital. People are not getting proper services. Even the workers themselves, they didn't have pressure on saving people based on what they have to deliver. It was more based on corruption, where you have to give kitu kidogo, either to be stepped in front of the queue to get the service, or a person to listen to you, right? But when Magufuli came, because he was at least addressing the corruption issues, at least the fear was there and people was getting service. You cannot compare with this situation with this leadership of Magufuli during this system, I mean, his season with other, I mean, the presidential terms past. Even if right now, I think if you try to go to the hospitals right now, you see this, it's like the former situation before Magufuli is starting to take off, I mean, to take on. So people, even the service, I mean, the service providers, the hospital workers, they don't have the fear of knowing that giving the service is their responsibility, but instead, they are trying to change it into business while they are getting paid the salary. So
yeah.
I think we have to deal with the new generation, starting with the youth, and at least in the small level of primary education, and have the plan that maybe after 10 years is when we can see the impact. But currently, I don't see anything that we can do exactly to reduce the number of number of corruption acts, because it's kind of sort of, if you see in the country now, it's kind of the song, which is a soft song, where the president, he doesn't sing, she doesn't sing it louder, and then the citizens also, they are kind of relaxing and seeing corruption as a way of life, which is completely not right. So we have to change the whole generation. We have to change the whole perception of the main leaders, which is actually they are the main doers. But we have to insist and put effort on education. That's what I think is the right way for me. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think that was really interesting. And what you say about starting at primary school, I think everything that has to do with society issues like this has to start there. And people who get in having jobs in, for instance, the PCCB, they have to not have a history of corruption, because then it's hard to tell about it to other people. Like you said, you have to kind of be clean when you so you can say no.
They're actually doing that, but the bad thing, I think also, if you try to see, the unemployment issue is an issue, because people, they're trying to get their relatives in position, to get their relatives in job. So this is also the kind of corruption. You might find that the combating of corruption entities, they are still also internally doing the corruption issues. To get a job, you see, because the bad thing about systems in Tanzania, it's like, if you wanna, they call them, I don't know how they call them in Swahili, we say vyombo vya ulinzi na usalama. PCCB, Tanzania Intelligence, they call TC, I think. it's kind of intelligence. I don't know what the long shot of it, but they are dealing with the security of the country. When you are in these entities, there is no another entity or body or anything without
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's
Thank you.
interesting. Actually, it was starting to get interesting.
Well, I guess we'll have to continue then. But in the meantime, yeah, we'll probably keep in touch. So have a nice evening, and thank you again. Bye bye.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.